So adventures. I remember one of my diving friends accompanied you on a trip to the Galapagos. I suspect you've traveled a variety of places. Besides the Northwest here, where's one of your favorite spots?
Well, the Galapagos is one of my favorite spots. You know, the Galapagos is a group of islands off of Ecuador, and a long way off of Ecuador. And when they put runways in, we could finally fly there, without taking 2 weeks to the boat over there.
To row.
It just took too much time out of your life. But Galapagos was very barren to me, topside, but it was like New York City underwater. Just lots and lots of marine life, big marine life, giant schools of fish, all kinds. If you saw an eagle ray, you didn't see one eagle ray, you see 200 of them at the same time. Bat rays, golden rays, sharks, just unbelievable number of sharks. They have primarily two kinds of sharks there, the Galapagos shark and big hammerheads. And on a dive, you wouldn't see one shark or two sharks, you'd see 50 to 100 sharks. You'd see a lot of them. And I remember the first time we went out, we made that big crossing from the cooler islands where the water's pretty cold because of the cold currents.
The way the currents work.
Yeah, there's
right.
3 different currents, upwellings coming up into that area. So we went to Darwin Island. And I remember arriving at Darwin Island. It was early morning, sun, very sunny, the sun sparkling on the water, dolphins, on the bow. And as we coast into Darwin, you could see all the shark fins cleaving the water, I mean, there were hundreds of shark fins cleaving the waters, and I thought, we're going to go into that? Yes, we were going to go into that. So the first dive was, our goal was to go look for whale sharks, which was the purpose of being out there. So we were going to dive for whale sharks. And we got the briefing from the dive master, who told us, all right, everybody's going to get into the water, and we're going to swim to the island. And then there were some reefs down there about 30, 40 feet, and we're going to sit in the rocks, and we're going to wait for the whale sharks. I'm going, we're just going to sit here out in the middle of nowhere and just wait for whale sharks to come by? Are you kidding me? So anyway, we jumped into that water, great visibility, and we could see just lots and lots of sharks everywhere. And so we just swam, over to the island and went down into the rocks because he's herding us all into the rocks, and we're finding these little areas where we're pocketing ourselves. We sit and wait, and I'm just sitting down there looking out into the void and going, okay, so we're supposed to wait for whale sharks to come along. Within 10 minutes, here come the whale sharks.
They're on schedule.
Right on schedule. I couldn't believe it. Everybody just launches out off the rocks, out into midwater, to meet the sharks and to start taking pictures of them. So that was a pretty exciting dive. And toward the end of the dive, if you can envision this, there was a big, I would call it big mama whale shark with a smaller, baby calf, whale shark, and another whale shark, which could have been, who knows, but there's 3 of them, of 3 different sizes. They look like a family, and then the hammerhead and Galapagos sharks all over the place, hundreds of them. And then a school of dolphins, coming through between the sharks, with all the sun rays coming through the water.
You ran out of film.
I did get a picture of it. I got to find it, though. I have to restore that picture. Yeah.
It sounds really neat.
It was a pretty exciting dive. So that's, when I say it's New York City,
you meant it.
I meant it. It's just action, action, action down there with big animals.
Neat.
So, and the other great place I've been to is the Red Sea.
Uh-huh.
The Red Sea is a very unique area. It's actually, very narrow because it's part of the East African Rift. So that's where 2 tectonic plates are splitting apart, drifting apart, kind of splitting the Earth. And the Middle East experience, with the Arabs and their culture and camels and all of that is pretty interesting, in that land. And of course, diving in the Red Sea, it's part of the Indian Ocean, and it's very clear, different kinds of marine life, and it's pretty exciting diving there too. So I always enjoy going back there, even though I haven't been back there in a while because of the political problems that they have back there.
Yeah, you need to stay safe.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. So we've stopped going to the Red Sea. So those are probably two of my favorites, you know, besides the Northwest and British Columbia.
Right.
So,
right.
So a lot of times I'll try to participate in diving expeditions, projects. One of the Red Sea projects, and a lot of people don't know this because we kind of kept this quiet, you know, in the early days, and that was walking in the footsteps of Moses. And so there was an expedition that was put together in the late 80s, and there was a man by the name of Dick Ewing, who has since passed away, that put this expedition together, and he wanted to retrace the footsteps of Moses in the Exodus and find the area where the Red Sea crossing was. And he was buying equipment from me to outfit the expedition. And so it didn't take very long before he realized that, you know, I knew a lot about, you know, diving and equipment and photography, and these are all areas he needed a little help in.
Right.
And so all of a sudden one day he said, Harry, you know, I could really use a guy like you on this expedition. You know, would you consider joining us? And I went, you know, diving in the Red Sea? Of course. Sure. Yeah. So he invited me to an organizational meeting in Portland, Oregon, and met the rest of the group. And we started getting organized. And so I went to, right after that meeting, I went to DEMA, and I told him I would look into a few things, you know, for him, and discovered that he had chartered an Israeli flagged boat that was going to be diving in the Straits of Tiran in the Red Sea off of the Sinai. And that is a restricted area for Israeli boats. They can go through it, but they just can't stop. So we had an immediate problem because everybody had airline tickets, you know, equipment was being air freighted over there. I don't even know how many cases of equipment we it was over there. Project. It was a huge project. You know, some of the participants in that trip, I think it was about 16, 17 people, was Jim Irwin, the Apollo astronaut, George Garrett of Garrett Metal Detection Equipment. You know, you've seen his equipment at all the airports.
Yeah, I've seen the ads for his diving stuff too.
Yeah, so George was on that trip as well. Roy Knutson of Colorado Springs University, a biblical archaeologist there that taught, a professor. And then Dick was the adventurer, filmmaker. And then everybody else was support. And so, so anyway, we had to scramble, and I called him up right away, and I said, "You've got the fantasy. You can't dive off of that boat in the Straits of Tiran." You know, and he says, "We got to find another boat then." He says, "Find another boat." So I went to the Egyptians and talked to them about the problem, and they found me a boat. And so I remember the boat called the Apohara. And so now we had two boats. And so we ended up using the Fantasy as a hotel ship, you know, where we would come back, and that's where we would eat, and that's where we would, you know, sleep and organize and everything. In the Apohara, we would climb on board, and it was more open. You know, it really didn't sleep very many people. And that's the ship that we would take out into the Straits of Tiran and go exploring out there. And except, you know, we did have a problem because, you know, we were manifested to the Fantasy, and we only had 6 people manifested to the Apohara, but we had to take the whole group to go diving, and the Egyptians, you know, Marine Force kept catching us and harassing us. And so we had to play all these kinds of games, and of course you can't really even tell them why you're there.
Right.
You know, and we had
don't want to know.
And we had this enormous metal detection equipment that we would lower over the sides, you know, trying to look for the golden chariots, you know.
Right.
And so it was a very, very interesting expedition, you know. And we think, to be honest with you, we think we found the real Red Sea crossing area because it's a land bridge. And we have pictures of people standing on it, you know, with their bodies, you know, out of the water. And there's little gaps in the land bridge. But remember, that was 3,500 years ago,
right.
And all the earthquakes and the drift, you know, split, you know, those connecting land masses, And our bathymetric charts could show exactly how they dovetail together. And we think that was just a land bridge that they walked across that was covered by water part of the time and not covered by water another part of the time. And in windy periods, in high tides,
seasonal, right?
You
seasonal wind changes.
Yeah,
exactly.
you could. Yeah, and they were steep on each side of that land bridge. So we think we got that figured out. We were going back, and there has been more work done on this, and but the political situation has gotten so bad that nobody ever finished the project.
Well, and it's a tough one to get finished too.
So. Yeah, that's a tough one. So anyway, those are just some of the expeditions and adventures that we've gone on.
Neat.